What is going on, everybody? Welcome into our next positional rankings video for the 2025 NFL Draft. If you followed the draft closely, you've probably heard that this edge class is a special one. And I don't always agree with these sort of generalized statements about draft classes at large. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. But in the case of this edge class, I absolutely agree. This is one of the most uniquely talented position groups in an individual NFL draft I've ever seen. To quantify that, I watched 20 players for today's video to put together a top 10 list, and we're actually going to be talking about 11 players because I have a tie at my number 10 spot, but all 11 of my highlight players here today have second round grades or better. That means we are going potential starter by potential starter, and all of these 11 players are going to be right inside or just outside of the top 50 players in this draft class. Call it 20% of the 50 best players in this draft are in this position group right here. That is crazy. So buckle up. This is going to be a really fun one. I'm not just talking about 11 players. About halfway through this video, I'm going to do a quick snapshot at some of the other top edge rushers in this class because there's a lot of good players that need to be discussed in a video like this. Very excited for this video today nonetheless. Before we do get started, if you could take just a second to hit that like button, it really does help me out. It's a free and easy thing that does help support this channel in a big way. And of course, make sure you're subscribed if you enjoy the video today. We've got tons of position rankings heading your way. Going to be doing about 2 a week now as we lead up to the draft. So lots of good stuff coming your way. You're not going to want to miss it. Make sure you're subscribed there. But let's get started with my number 11 edge rusher in this class, or my 10B edge rusher, who shares the same overall grade as my number 10 player. But the first player we're talking about here today is Josiah Stewart out of Michigan. And I first saw some exciting flashes from Stewart when I was down there in person at the Senior Bowl. But before I got into his film, I really didn't expect to like him this much. And that's because he's just one of these smaller edge rushers, right? 6'1", 249 pounds at the combine, probably a little bit of water weight there. He didn't work out at the combine. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt and list him at 249, but probably more like 243, 245, something like that. But the reality is it's just really hard for these undersized edge rushers to hit in the NFL. And more often than not, they don't hit in the NFL, but you can't just dismiss them entirely either because they do exist. You do have your Hassan Reddicks, Elvis Dumervil, hell, James Harrison, Hall of Famer at like 6 foot, 240 pounds. So they are out there. It's just a tough balance. But when it comes to Josiah Stewart, I do think he has the tools to become an impactful pass rusher in the NFL. And the reason I say that is that Josiah Stewart is able to attack all 4 of the different pathways that exist for edge rushers to beat tackles and get after the quarterback. You'll hear other people talk about these different pathways. Certainly myself in this video, I'll be bringing this up. But the 4 main paths for an edge rusher to beat a tackle are going to be that true speed to corner, running around the outside, threatening with a speed rush, and bending around that far outside of the tackle. And then you have both shoulders that exist as pathways. The outside shoulder, which is a little different than that true cornering ability. This is more of what you hear when people talk about attacking the half man. So this is going to be swim moves, rip moves, inside out counters. We are not necessarily threatening the true range of the corner, but you can win to that outside shoulder of the tackle. And then there's the inside shoulder. That's more self-explanatory, I think. A lot of times that's getting a tackle to set wide, and then you use the quickness to win to the inside shoulder with a swipe or a rip move. And then the 4th pathway is going to be the power rush, going through the offensive tackle's chest. And that, as I'm going to talk about in a minute, is where Josiah Stewart impressed me the most and where I wasn't expecting him to have some of that power. But as far as threatening the corner as our first pathway, he absolutely has that. Now, I will say he doesn't have incredible speed. It doesn't look like we're going to get a 40-yard dash from him. I don't think he would have blown us away with his 40. I would have expected maybe 4.64, 4.65, but that's certainly good enough speed to kind of threaten the corner, push the top of the tackle's drop, and then he pairs that with a really nice first step. He's got really good bend to help him turn that corner, and then above all, he's got great technique to use his hands with chops and swipes to keep the tackle's hands off of him so that the tackle can't just kind of chase him and flush him out of the pocket, as a lot of tackles do against these speed rushes to the corner. So he's got that. As far as the inside shoulder is concerned, that is his best way to win, where he threatens first with the outside, gets you to respect that, and then he's got really quick feet, great swipe moves to win on an inside counter. Had a beautiful win in that way at the Senior Bowl, but it shows up on tape constantly. That, I have no doubt, is a way he's going to be able to win in the NFL. And then going back to that outside shoulder, he can win in that way as well. He's got inside out pass rush moves, some of those kind of Euro steps where he'll fake inside and then quickly bend to the outside shoulder of the tackle. He's really good at that. He's got some chops and swipes as well he can use in that way. And then the fourth pathway, the bull rush. Again, this is where he impressed me. Now, I don't think this is going to be a defining strength in his game. I don't think he's going to overwhelm offensive tackles with power, but I do think he's got enough that they're going to have to set for it and account for it and stay honest against the bull rush to the degree that he can then stem off into all these other different moves. That's where I think a lot of undersized edge rushers fall short, is tackles just don't need to respect the power. They can fall a little bit deeper in their drops, knowing that they're not really going to go backwards. And it just kind of takes away one of those pathways and makes it a lot easier on these NFL tackles. With Josiah Stewart, again, he's got enough power that you have to respect it. While he's undersized, he is strong. 6'1", 245 is still a pretty compact build. And he did have more impressive pop in his hands and leg drive than I expected. And even though he does have some of the shorter arm length to consistently land his hands inside, that's a detractor. But at 6'1", he can really get up and under your pads and take you for a ride at times. He had some really dominant bull rushes on tape. I just think it's going to be a little bit more inconsistent for him. But again, the fact that he can put together a dominant bull rush is something you do have to respect. So to me, with all these different ways that he can win and has won and has been incredibly productive early in his career back at Coastal Carolina, I believe it was, and then when he transferred to Michigan, he's got 4 years of efficient production at the highest level of competition in the Big Ten, national champion, all that. I really think this is a guy that can, in a worst-case scenario, be someone that can come in on third downs and get after the quarterback and help you end some drives. And that's where my low-end comp of Egbanya Okoronkwo comes in. Someone that's been an underrated, kind of number 3 edge rusher in the league that has played that sort of pass rushing specialist role. I think he can do that. But as I talk about some of his weaknesses and things that he needs to prove he can do better and develop at, if he can get a little bit better as he gets a little older here, I do think he can actually be a full-time starter. And that's where my high-end pro comp of D Ford comes in, who was a really efficient number 2 pass rusher for the Chiefs that got a big contract from the Niners. And then, you're going to look back on that and say, that's a pretty bad high-end comp. Well, he was really at a good point in his career, and then the injuries derailed everything. Anyway, we're talking about Josiah Stewart, not D Ford, but I'm talking about D Ford in his prime. But anyway, with Stewart, there are some weaknesses, right? As a run defender, he's just very limited. He is smaller, so he will get flushed out of the run. He can't really anchor. I will give him credit. He gives it his all. He doesn't want to get moved off the run, but sometimes there's only so much he can do. And with those shorter arms, he doesn't really have your traditional stack, peek, shed type of technique. I do think, though, there are undersized edge rushers that have shorter arms that have made it work in the league. I think of like Shaq Barrett, 32.25-inch arms. Guys like Nolan Smith and Harold Landry. If you really can develop an elite feel for the run game and you're quick like Josiah Stewart, and he does have some strength to him, he can be a lot better defending the run in the league than he even is right now coming out of college, where he can slip blocks, he can show instincts, And then in a 3-4 system, he can also provide some of that coverage flexibility you look for as well, where you can, shelter his run defense by scheming him up into coverage and all that good stuff from a base 3-4 front. If he can get a little bit better as a run defender and just develop some of the areas as a pass rusher, whether that's, continuing to refine his pass rushing tool belt, or maybe he can stay bulked up at 249, prove that he can really bull rush at a consistently high level, something like that. Just get a little bit more as a pass rusher than we're projecting day one as a rookie. I really think he can emerge as a legitimate number 2 starter. And for that to be the first player that we're talking about on this list is a testament to all of the talent we've got to get through in today's video. Now, before we do transition to my number 10 player here, I do want to thank the sponsor for today's video, SeatGeek, the #1 ticketing app on the market. I buy all of my tickets on SeatGeek. Very excited for baseball season to start back up. I'm a big baseball fan, going to games in the summer. One of my favorite activities, hands down. And SeatGeek is the place to go to make sure you get the best seats and the most bang for your buck. They have the best user interface with color-coded seats. Just look for the green dots and you are getting market competitive prices and the best value on those seats. I love as well how they're really good about having images from that stadium, exactly what your seats are going to look like. Their app is the best in terms of functionality. You get your tickets right there in the app instead of some of the other ones I've used where you got to hop through email chains and contact the ticket owner and all this annoying stuff that adds this unnecessary stress before you get to the gate. SeatGeek will eliminate all of that for you. And I've been happily partnered with SeatGeek for a long time, so much so that longtime viewers of the channel have probably used my code in the past. Well, SeatGeek has hooked us up with a new promo code. It is code TFG10. And whether you're an existing SeatGeek customer that has used my old code, or this is your first purchase on SeatGeek, you will save up to $20 on your first purchase. Get you an even better deal on whatever the next event you're going to is. So that is code TFG10 at SeatGeek. And thank you to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video. But let's now go to my number 10 edge rusher, Princely Emmanuelin out of Ole Miss. At 6'4", 244 pounds, Emmanuelin had some remarkable production in 2 different SEC programs over the last couple of years. He had 45 pressures and 7 sacks in his 4th season at Florida. And then last year, his best year at Ole Miss, 55 pressures, 11 sacks. Against that level of competition, that is no joke. And he is stylistically a very, very smooth speed rusher who isn't that fast. Which may or may not sound enticing, but even if, he ran like a 4.73, I think it was at the combine, maybe 4.72, either way, on film, you can see his top speed caps out quickly. And if he does want to threaten that corner, he does lack a little bit of that extra speed to get there that you prefer to see from more of a speed rusher. But that said, he still has excellent get off. He has incredible bend, and he has excellent technique to help him win the corner. The bend is what's most notable. He just feels more pliable than most of the edge rushers in this class, and relative to NFL edge rushers, he has remarkable bend. He has that natural balance through contact as he stays low and works through tackles that a lot of the elite edge rushers in the NFL have. So that helps him win to the corner. And then again, even if he's not that fast, he has incredible get off. He is off the snap in a hurry, and he threatens the top of that corner within his first couple steps. And that's reflected by his 38-inch vertical jump and 126-inch broad jump. Those are impressive testing numbers, even if the 40 time isn't standard for what you'd look for in someone that their primary pass rush move is going to be that speed rush to the corner. So he's got the bend, he's got the get off, and then he has excellent technique where he uses chops and swipes to keep hands off from offensive tackles, so they can't really slow down his ability to press that corner and bend through them. He also has an excellent rip move that he uses to work through these tackles. So other than the speed, he has everything he needs to really threaten the corner as a speed rusher in the NFL. And I do think that will play, right? It's just you have to acknowledge that he doesn't have the typical speed you'd look for to dominate with that move in the league. So that does kind of take just down his upside a little bit, and I think that's fair. But with that speed rush being his primary move, and again, without the speed, it's still being enough for him to threaten that corner, he weaponizes his secondary move consistently, and that move is his spin move. He has the cleanest spin move in this draft class, and he certainly uses it more, I would say, than at least anybody in this top 11 list. Really quick feet, excellent technique to kind of, sit in the chair, throw that left shoulder or right shoulder, whichever side he's spinning from, just kind of knock the tackle back, use that momentum to work inside, and he knows when to go to it as well. So he has really a pretty clear-cut, like 1A, 1B type of move set that he just kind of mixes up really, really well, and those two moves play perfectly together because, of course, you got to set hard to the outside to protect against his speed rush. You do that, that's when he's going to pull you back inside and win with that inside counter. So those two moves together work really well, and then he's kind of flirting with a bunch of other changeups where, he's mixed in a ghost move, inside swipe counters to pair with that inside spin move that he's got. He's got different Euro steps that he flashed a couple times on film. He doesn't use them too much. That's where you're talking about if he can really start to develop those individual moves and get that into his kind of consistent package of pass rushing moves, that's when he could really become a problem as a legitimate starting number 2 edge rusher in the league. On top of that as well, he's flashed some power, but to me, I would love to see him find a way to bulk up just a little bit, because he just, especially in his arms, man, like if you catch the wrong camera angle, he looks like a wide receiver at times. He just doesn't have any pop in his arms, and frankly, it's not just the bull rush. Getting a little bit more strength in his arms, he obviously has the frame to do that. He is a fifth-year senior. He hasn't done it yet, but if he could just get up to like 252 all in his arms, so you're not losing that explosiveness in his lower half, I would love to see that, because it's not just the power. That would help him throw that back shoulder on spin moves to get a little bit more push there. It would help him on some of his rips and chops to displace the arms of offensive tackles. So that's one area where, like, man, you could get a little bit more upside out of him there. And, of course, more pop in his arms, more bull rush ability. He's flashed the ability to convert speed to power with that good first step he has and his length, but it's not nearly at a point where I'm comfortable saying he's going to consistently beat tackles with the bull rush or even win enough with it where they are forced to respect that bull rush. But even with that, and even with some of the sort of lack of speed for a speed rusher, similar to Josiah Stewart, like I really think he can come in at least as a designated pass rusher, put on that spin move, win the corner, get him out there against maybe a stiffer footed tackle in a matchup where he could really leverage that strength he has and help you end some drives. If he develops his pass rush and frankly, if he can figure out how to defend the run, which is it's just non-existent for him, like down the board. He's light, he doesn't anchor. We mentioned the lack of strength in his arms, so he doesn't really have the ability to kind of have those hammer hands that knock back tackles in the run game. He doesn't really have the shed strength. He doesn't have great diagnostics against the run. He can't really play on early downs right now. But if he can get better there, again, if he could bulk up in his arms, I really do think he could be a full 3-down starter. My pro comp on him is Arden Key, someone that has emerged as kind of a low-end 2/ really nice designated pass rusher in the league. The frame is pretty damn similar for Emmanuel and Key. Key's an underrated player. Just a lot of people don't know that because he plays for the Titans and the Jags before that. But I'm a fan. I like him, and I liked his tape a lot more than I frankly expected heading into watching his tape. Again, a testament to just how good this draft class is. He's got a true second-round grade for me. And anywhere, picks 40 to 62, I'm perfectly happy taking my number 10 edge rusher here, Princely Emmanuel, in this draft. But next up, my number 9 edge rusher is probably the player on this list that I'm most excited to talk about here today. Definitely going to end up one of my guys in this draft, and that is David Walker out of Central Arkansas. Just such a fun watch, man, and really a total anomaly of a prospect. There's really not a great close pro comp on him because he's just over 6 foot, 6'1.5", and 263 pounds. And on top of that, he's coming from the FCS level. So trying to find a similar profile coming out of college, you tell me if you've got an accurate one, because he really is an anomaly. But I think the fact that he is such a rare kind of unicorn type of prospect does get me excited about the potential upside of him as a guy that, his upside, I think, stands out ahead of the two guys that we just talked about. And even some of the guys we have left to talk about, I think you could argue Walker has better upside. And that's because you throw on his tape at Central Arkansas, and he's just unblockable against his level of competition. In the last 3 seasons, he's had 151 pressures on under 1,000 pass rush snaps, a pressure rate of 16%. He's got 37 sacks in his last 3 seasons. And that's including the fact that you throw on his tape, teams at this level knew who the NFL guy was. He was receiving constant slide help, double teams, chip help. Teams would run away from him. They would bootleg away from him. They did everything they could to slow down David Walker. It felt automatic, though. If he got a one-on-one rep, he was going to get into the backfield almost immediately, and he would only get seemingly 4, 5, 6 of those a game, and he would take advantage of it almost every time. It was just stupid, unblockable tape against his level of competition. And obviously, you have to try to factor that in here. If you just ignored his level of competition, you're talking about him as a first-round type of prospect, and I'm not. He's still a second-round guy for me, but even though he's going against FCS players, there's just very little about the way that he wins that tells me that his skill set can't translate to the league. At an athletic 6'1.5", 263 pounds, of a fully evenly built, balanced frame. He's got even distribution that you look for in terms of arm strength, core strength, big legs, just even weight distribution. And he's a good athlete, tested pretty well in Indianapolis at the combine. Not amazing, but pretty well. 4.69 40, 35-inch vertical jump, 118-inch broad jump, 7.153 cone, 26 bench press reps, 4.39 shuttle. He did every drill and checked every box to tell you this is an NFL-level athlete right here. So with his size, with his strength, with his athleticism, he just tests a leverage point that most tackles can't access, if that makes sense. For example, his rip move, that is, I would say, his go-to move, it's just how do you really block that? Where are you supposed to put your hands when he plays fast, strong, and low? Where are you supposed to put your hands to, stop him? He's just bursting off the ball, attacking your inside and outside hip, and you don't know which hip he's going to come at because he does have the technique to set you up in and out with that rip move. But you blink, and all of a sudden, he's ripping, and his helmet is, right here for the video folk. You can see, it's just where do you put your hands to really stop that? And the fact that he's got the kind of contact balance and power to play through that, because realistically, the best way to stop that would to just kind of push them into the ground. But he's a bowling ball. He's not 240 pounds. He's a thick 263 pounds, and he just pushes through that contact. It's really tough to block, and guys at his level of competition could not block him. And at the Senior Bowl, he had a really good week. And it's not just that rip move, though it's definitely his go-to move and something tackles are going to have to figure out how to stop, but he will also mix things up with a bull rush where at that size, even if he's got shorter arm length, although 32 inches at 6'1.5" is not horrible. that's more like linebacker or cornerback height. And typically you're getting between 30 and 32 inches at those positions. So like relative to his height, it's not bad. It's just relative to all edge rushers, it's not great. It's just relative to all edge rushers, it's certainly below average. It's like 5th percentile or something like that. But at his size, he still can really get up and under your pads and take you for a ride with his bull rush, where, again, he's got pop in his hands. He's 263 pounds. That alone is really hard to stop. Forget about his rip move for a second. And then the fact that you also see him mix in like subtle swim moves and swipes and Euro steps just to kind of have a change up in there. It's just crazy to think about the type of steal you could be getting in David Walker simply if his production and his play style translates against NFL level competition. Now, he's not perfect, especially when it comes to run defense. He can anchor. Again, this is a very strong player, a thick player that's hard to move. So he can hold his own, but he often elects not to because with his lack of arm length and with his lack of height, he really struggles to go to your kind of typical stack, peek, shed type of run defense technique. So you're going to be talking about a guy that's looking to split gaps, splash into the backfield, and make plays that way, as opposed to someone that can really, truly set a hard edge. He can kind of do it because he can anchor, but you can, more often than not, you can kind of just run right past him because he really struggles to get off of those blocks. And because he struggles to see at times, his diagnostics can struggle as well. And those shorter arms hurt his tackling consistency to really wrap guys up. He missed a fair share of tackles, including sack opportunities. And that's only going to go up playing at the NFL level. So those are definitely legitimate knocks on him. On top of that, again, the level of competition is by far the biggest question mark on him. It's a fair question mark. And then he also turns 25 in June. So he's an older prospect, which would be more of a problem for me if I looked at him as a raw prospect, but I don't. I think he knows how he wins. He's pretty refined. I don't think his game's going to change all that much when he gets to the league. So I'm much less worried about him being 25 years old when he's taken that time in college to develop. It just might take a little bit of time to see what he can and can't get away with against NFL players. But to me, his upside absolutely stands out compared to some of the guys we've talked about and some of these other like late second, early third round prospects in this draft. I think there is a best case scenario where David Walker can actually be like the best edge rusher on your team in a happy situation. My high end comp on him is Olivier Vernon. Was a really good player. I think the Brandon Graham comps are absolutely fair for David Walker. The way he wins is almost identical to Brandon Graham, and we know the career Brandon Graham had. I don't think that's out of the range of possibilities for David Walker. It's just far from a guarantee because of the level of competition he played at. I do think worst case, though, something like a Bud Dupree. Again, I struggled with comps on David Walker. Bud Dupree's a different player. He's a lengthier player and a better run defender. But at least in terms of being kind of a, stick of dynamite that you can drop into blitzes and stunts and cause chaos as a pass rusher, I think he could at least do that for you. Like, I do think his floor to at least be some bit of a weapon as a pass rusher is still there no matter what. But I'm a big fan. Can't wait to watch this guy in the league, and just going to call my shot a little bit. If he happens to be there at pick number 90 for the Los Angeles Rams, they would love dropping him into that D-line, and they're a team that likes these outlier types of prospects and has had a lot of success for him. So I'm just going to call my shot on the LA Rams. I'm sorry I'm not doing like best team fits for this video. That's been a request you guys have had. Might get there eventually. But happy to have a shout out there with David Walker fitting with the Rams. But let's go ahead to our next edge rusher. We have another tie in the ratings here. I do like to keep these grades kind of clustered together to indicate that these are really the same caliber type of prospects. I'm just slightly preferring one over the other. And in this case, I have Donovan Eziraku as my number 8/7B ranked edge rusher out of Boston College. And he is just a silky smooth, slippery pass rusher. He stays low to the earth. He's got long 34-inch arms to kind of help distance himself from tackles. He's got incredible bend, incredible agility, and his just change of direction skills make it just really hard for tackles to keep their hands on him and just get their hands on him to begin with. For example, the way that he can just win with a Euro step and go almost untouched as if he's driving to the hoop in basketball, that's something not a lot of edge rushers can do. And he's kind of crafted his whole pass rushing skill set around the threat of that sort of silky, smooth, slippery athleticism that he has. He's really good, though, at threatening the corner. He doesn't have great speed, but he's got, again, incredible bend. He's got great get-off to hit the top of that tackle's drop and just loop around him. Again, using those long arms to kind of use swipes and rips to just make sure that the tackle's not getting every bit of his body on Ezeraku, and then he can just bend around the corner. He's got that true speed to bend rush in his game, absolutely. Then, now that he's got tackles having to respect that outside corner, he has just awesome inside counters, a whole variety of chop moves, swipes, swims, Euro steps, you name it. He'll break it all out. And that's the core of how he wins, but he even does break out the bull rush. And even though he's listed at 6'2.5", 248 pounds, on tape, he is like filled out, and he does have like decent play strength to his game, more than I was expecting. I don't think it's going to be a defining strength in his game because, again, he's just not that fast. So he doesn't have like true speed to power, but he's got adequate pop in his hands. He's got adequate leg drive, enough that you do have to respect the bull rush. He's kind of a bigger, longer, smoother version of kind of what we talked about with Josiah Stewart. He does also just offer more in the run game than really any of the three guys we've talked about. All the three guys we've talked about are a little bit different. But, Ezeraku does have really good instincts against the run. He recognizes the run really well. He uses that slipperiness to knife into the backfield. And his ability to just kind of navigate through traffic and stay square to the ball carrier with long 34-inch arms, he is a problem once he gets into the backfield. And even though he doesn't have a great anchor, he's a lighter player, he can do a little bit more with that arm length to actually take on blocks in the sense that you want, and maybe set a harder edge in a traditional sense than some of the guys we've talked about. I don't think it's a defining strength in his game, but I feel much better dropping Ezeraku in on a first down in the NFL on day one than, again, anybody we've talked about. So that gives him a nod as well. Really, the only true knock on him is just the lack of elite traits. That he doesn't have the size. He doesn't have he has elite acceleration, change of direction, agility packaged all together, but he really is not that fast. So you are talking about someone whose best move arguably is the speed rush, and he just doesn't have that top speed. There's a few of those guys in this class, like him and Aman Mielen. So he's a little bit similar in that way, where it's like he's going to be able to win with the speed rush in the NFL, but his efficiency with it is going to be reduced. He's not going to be winning with the speed rush like prime Von Miller or Micah Parsons or even like a Hassan Reddick in his prime, for example. In fact, my pro comp is Harold Landry. And I know that's lazy. You don't scout the helmet, but at 6'2.5", 250 pounds, coming out of Boston College, someone that I project as kind of a late first, early second type of player, that's right where Harold Landry went. Harold Landry, while I've talked crap about what he is now for the Patriots, he's been a really good number 2 edge rusher for like 8 years for the Titans. If you get that with Ezeraku at the end of the second or early first, you're absolutely taking that. So I hate to do the same school comp there, but I really do think, at least in terms of the caliber player I project him to be, where he gets drafted, it really all lines up, and a lot of their styles and physical profile is damn similar as well. So I really like Ezeraku. There's definitely some people putting him up into like the top 20 picks of the draft. I don't know if I'm just higher on this draft class in general, or if I am lower on Ezeraku. To me, if you're taking a guy in the top 20, you're more thinking he could be like a legit number 1 guy. I do think the traits are going to have a limiting factor on Ezeraku at some point, but the floor is really nice. And Once you kind of get into the late first, early second, you're more talking about aiming for a number 2 type of starter. That's really where I think the sweet spot is for Ezuraku. All right, and then with the same overall grade of 6.4 in my grading scale, and by the way, if you want information on any of the stuff you see on screen, it's all in the description below. But one of the more fascinating narratives on a player in this entire draft class here with Nick Scorton out of Texas A&M, technically my number 7 edge rusher in this draft. So where you have to start with Scorton is he played at Texas A&M at 280 pounds, which is 23 pounds heavier than he weighed in at the combine. And I really like that for him, but it's tough because we watched him play 23 pounds heavier. But when I watched him, my number one thought was like, man, he's got really good finesse. He's got good bend for a big guy. He's got active arms for swipes and cross chops. He's got really quick feet for a big guy. But I was like, why are you playing at 280 pounds? Because he doesn't really bull rush or play with a ton of power or speed to power. And in my opinion, when I was watching him at 280 before I even knew that he was going to drop weight, I was like, I would love to see if you could maximize the way you win playing closer to 260 pounds. And then he leaves Texas A&M, where frankly something was going on because Shamar Stewart was not as good as he could be. Nick Scorton wasn't as good as he could be. Scorton was better the year before at Purdue. Walter Nolan left the program, had a much better year at Ole Miss. Something was going on, and he gets out of that program and goes, in my opinion, much closer to what should be his natural playing weight. Now, I do think he played pretty close to that at Purdue as well. I went back and watched a game at Purdue, and I saw a similar deal. So it's not just Texas A&M Aggies fans. I don't want to just pile on you. Purdue had him playing at a big weight too, but it just makes his evaluation, it adds a lot of what I call fog of war to his evaluation. We watched him at 280. You can see how he wins, what he's good at, where he projects, but we just don't have tape of him at this playing weight, which is especially interesting when, again, the way he wins, especially with like cross chops and spin moves and swipes and inside counters, it should play so much better at 260. We just unfortunately don't have the film on it to see how well that's going to translate. And that's why if you're looking at this graphic, you see all these question marks. The athletic tools, I'm kind of trying to meet in the middle a little bit, maybe lowballing it a little bit. He didn't test as well. That's the other kind of frustrating thing. He dropped all this weight. Would have been so great to see him come out and run a 4.6 240 and a good 3-cone to show off those agility testing numbers that match what he shows on film. Just to, not that I like need the testing numbers, but because he didn't play at this weight, I just want to know that it translated. You know what I'm saying? So he does have a pro day in a few days. Hopefully he does some stuff just to kind of get a little bit more clarity on it, but hard to know just how much more athleticism he's really getting by dropping this weight. And then again, kind of getting into his pass rushing skill set. What does the drop in weight mean for him? I think especially with his bend, that's where I'm excited, because I thought at 280 pounds, he had really good bend. With that rip move, like he could really get low and work around the inside and outside shoulders of offensive tackles. Could that be even better, dropping 23 pounds and be like a defining strength in his game? And I think all of the different quick-hitting pass rush moves he has, that spin move, that cross chop, could be really, really nice with better foot speed, you know, not having to pick up 280 pounds every time he lifts his feet. So I think the pass rushing upside is much more at this weight than what we saw at 280 pounds. It's not all guaranteed, though, because he does like swipes and chops and rip moves. That does require an element of power as well. So you don't want to lose that at the cost of quicker feet. So again, just to be determined there. And then with the run defense, theoretically, you know, he's not undersized or anything. He's 6'3", 260 pounds, 33-inch arms. That's all good thumbs up type of stuff. But can he anchor as well? Does he have the true shed strength to dispose of offensive tackles at a lighter weight? Inversely, is he a better tackler because he's able to, you know, have better agility and stay square for sacks and tackles to the perimeter? There's just so many different areas where it's like, less of a power profile, more of an agility profile. What does it mean for a 20-year-old prospect that does have really good overall technique? It's a little all over the map. But ultimately, because he's making a shift in a direction that benefits his play style better, I'm willing to roll the dice on him inside the top 50, even as early as, right at the top of the second round, even like depending how the board falls, 30, pick 32, 31. If teams like the Chiefs and Eagles really want to go edge, I'd be fine with that value. That's why it's top 50 and not second round. But ultimately, like, this is a player I believe in to be a number 2 edge rusher in the league. I don't think he's got incredible athleticism in there. Maybe at 260 pounds, he does. Like, that's part of the exciting part of it. But even after dropping weight, I don't think he's like a 4.5 40 type of guy. I don't think he's this insane athlete, though he is very quick. But that probably going to cap him from being this dominant number 1 type of edge rusher. But my pro comp on him is George Karlaftis, a guy that does win with a lot of kind of finessey stuff, very similar size, went at the very end of the first round of the Chiefs, and he's been a very good number 2 edge rusher for the Chiefs. Number 2, complement of Chris Jones. Like, that's exactly the type of trajectory I see for Nick Scorton. And there's a little bit of hidden theoretical upside in there with the whole weight change and all of that. So I really like him. I believe in him. It's crazy that he's only our 7th ranked edge rusher, but again, it's a testament to this draft class. Now, before we go to my number 6 player, I do want to kind of do a quick best of the rest segment here. No graphics, just going to kind of talk through these guys because there's so many players you guys are going to want to hear about. Just going to read off a couple quick notes on our players 12 through 16 here, all players that have 2nd to 3rd round grades all the way down to my 16th player on this list. But if you do want full grades, full write-ups, all the information you're seeing on screen in this video, strengths, weaknesses, pro comps, all of it, you can get access to my draft guide over on Patreon with all of that information. I've got over 100 players written up so far. We've got 20 total edge players fully evaluated and written up. Planning on having all 34 edge rushers that were combine invites fully written up come draft day as well, and over 300 total players in the whole draft guide come draft day, so you can get all of that information and support my channel. This is the best time of the year to go sign up at patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. But anyway, the first player that did not make this list was Oluwafemi Oladejo out of UCLA. Just a ball of energy, showed some really exciting flashes in his first year as an edge rusher. He played off-ball linebacker, but he's got crazy coverage instincts because of that off-ball linebacker experience. He's a pretty good run defender because of that as well. He wins with that same cross chop that Latu had at UCLA. So for his first year at edge, he did really well. And for me, he's a late 2nd, early 3rd round grade type of player. Could be an awesome number 3 type of guy for your D-line, or end up a number 2 guy if he keeps developing. Then after him, I have as my 12B ranked rusher, JT Tuimoloau out of Ohio State. Either the best or 2nd best run defending edge player in this class. It's just some of the lack of pass rushing upside that kept him out of our top 11 list. But it's not that he can't win as a rusher. He's got really strong, active hands. He wins late a lot with effort and late types of wins. He's good at kind of deconstructing blocks. So to me, he's a pro-ready number 3 edge rusher that can come in and give you dominant run defense right away. And then unless he shows you a surprising amount of pass rushing ability in the NFL, probably someone that's going to come off the field more often than not for pass rushing situations. After him, again, with that same 2nd to 3rd round grade profile, I have Braden Swinson out of LSU. To me, kind of a jack of all trades, master of none type. Good technique as a pass rusher, a little power, good finesse for sure, decent run defender. I think his most likely outcome is a very useful number 3 type of edge rusher, but with a little bit of development, I think he could someday be even a starting 3-down number 2 type of edge rusher. After that, I have as my 12D/16th ranked edge rusher, again with a second to a third round grade, Landon Jackson out of Arkansas. In a different draft class, this is the type of guy that starts to sneak into late first, early second round discussions because he's this kind of lanky freak athlete type that's still trying to figure things out. He's got to learn how to keep his pads down and put together more consistency with his pass rush moves, but he absolutely has potential to develop into a real number 2 type of player. And that's just the top 16. I mean, that's not mentioning Jack Sawyer, who has some pass rushing upside, Kyle Kennard out of South Carolina, who's just a thumper, along with Jared Ivey. Got third round grades on those 3 guys. So again, this draft class is just impossibly deep, and it's a good year to need some edge defensive linemen. But let's go to my number 6 overall edge rusher. One of my, I think, more controversial rankings here, Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Someone fairly consistently getting mocked inside the top, certainly top 15 draft picks, and I'm just not there with him. I think his risk profile is way too large in a draft class that I think is very good and very deep at edge, right? That's just too early for me to gamble on Jalen Walker. Now, I do understand the sort of theoretical upside that exists there. You know, my high-end comp on him is Hassan Reddick. I'm not saying that it can't hit. For me, it's just maybe I'm a little more risk averse, or I'm just lower on Jalen Walker. I don't know. But he's a wildly fascinating player, considering he played most of his snaps as a rush linebacker for Georgia. He had just 244 snaps in his final season as an edge rusher. And that's what he's going to play in the league, because to me, he's not a linebacker. His tape when he did play linebacker just frankly isn't good. Like, there's just no way you watched him as a linebacker prospect and see him as a round 1 guy. There's just no way. Like, he doesn't have run diagnostics. He's got poor ability to take on blocks. He has abysmal coverage feel. Like, he's just not a linebacker. And Georgia knew it too. Like, they didn't even really have him playing a lot of early down real linebacker stuff. What they would do is nickel packages, dime packages, just float him around the line of scrimmage, try to find matchups. And he had, man, I don't have the numbers, but just to lowball it, at least 20% of his snaps had to be rushing as just a rush middle linebacker, where he's bouncing around, trying to confuse protections, and just kind of targeting like the inside or outside shoulder of a guard and just like ripping past him. And he's really freaking good at that. But is that an edge prospect that is you're taking in the top 10 to 20 picks of the draft? That's a tough sell for me. And again, as an actual linebacker prospect, the evaluation has to be on Walker. He's a kind of dime a dozen developmental traits-based linebackers that typically go late second, early third, early fourth round, and his strength would be blitzing in that category. But I feel pretty damn good saying the league will profile him as a true edge rusher, even though he's 6'1", 243 pounds, and abysmal arm length at 32 inches is bottom 5, 5th percentile. He is a tweener in every sense of the word, but his skills do definitely translate more as an edge rusher. Now, I don't want to just talk crap about him because, like I said, his best tape was as a rush linebacker with that rip move. And I'm not saying he's Micah Parsons, but he does have that same kind of athletic, bendy rip move where he just gets low, is pliable through the block, and is powerful, kind of pushing back upwards through his core, through his leg, and just athletic to accelerate and bend and rip through blocks. That's the trait. That is what Jalen Walker has. That is his superpower. The question is, can you put that on the edge, get him to win with that consistently against tackles, and then start to develop a pass rush plan from there? Because right now, he just has no real move set. When he did line up on the edge, he was either going to go to that speed rush, try to win the corner, go to the bull rush, where he does have some power, but with 32-inch arms, you do see this from him. It's just very inconsistent in the sense that very seldom did he connect with the inside chest, light up a tackle, and have that just disruptive power. It was actually more of a steady push in his bull rush more often than not, where maybe he gets one hand inside, or sometimes both hands are kind of landing on the extended arms of a tackle or on the outside shoulder pads, and he's just kind of trying to steer the tackle backwards, where he is a very naturally strong, powerful player, and he gets that leverage at 6'1". He had really good leg drive, but to me, if he needs to find a way, whether it's mixing in ghost moves and different finesse moves, he needs to get better with his hands so that he can more consistently connect on that bull rush and really convert speed to power. Because right now it's just completely developmental, but it is, the theoretical upside for him to do that is in there. And then again, he has that rip move from the edge, but I would say it had much more mixed results using a rip move from the edge than he did kind of lining up as a stand-up linebacker doing it from the interior. And then from a run defense perspective, I mean, most of his run defense snaps were as a linebacker, so it's tough to kind of guess where he's going to slot in as an edge rusher, but his run defense tape was not good as a linebacker. He got caught up on blocks. He had poor diagnostics as a linebacker. Now, it's a lot harder to have diagnostics as a linebacker, and I think that should help him at edge. This is a lot different. He can see the game from a different lens that way. But at 6'1", 243 pounds, you definitely don't project his anchor to be that good with 32-inch arms. There's just a lot of projecting to do with him as a run defender on early downs as well. Theoretically, the coverage stuff should translate pretty well for Walker. Though that said, his coverage feel as an off-ball linebacker was abysmal to just downright bad. Really didn't have any idea what he was supposed to be looking at in the very small sample size of true hook zone coverage reps from a linebacker alignment. The best thing he has in run defense is he is a tremendous tackler. He's got really strong arms to wrap guys up. He's quick. He stays square. So that should translate at least. And if you want to run tosses or screens his way, or if he does get into the backfield to wrap up these athletic quarterbacks, he's very good at finishing those tackles. So again, man, there is a lot to like as I broke down, but there's just so much projecting going on. I just cannot get on board with some of the hype we're seeing on Jalen Walker. If he becomes a really good, impactful number one edge rusher, I think it's in there. But I think he has to come into the league as a number 3, as a rotational designated pass rusher to start, as you just kind of start to stack skills on top of each other, because he doesn't have them at this point in time. So for me, he's more of a late first, early second type of guy. And I do think there's bust potential with him. I do think there's a chance where he just doesn't work out as an edge, really. And you end up maybe making him kind of like a Devin White type of linebacker, where he actually makes that transition to linebacker, and maybe he can develop in that phase, but is really just out there to blitz on third downs, where he's incredible at it, just like Devin White always was, but that's really all he did well. And in fact, if you look at their physical profiles, they are damn similar types of players. So that's a worst case scenario. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I could see a world where he is kind of flushed out as a former first round pick and someone that is a very role specific player. But let's go ahead and move to my number 5 edge rusher, which is going to stay at Georgia with Mykel Williams. So what if I told you Georgia had a lengthy, highly recruited edge rusher that they basically just stuck as a 4-eye and essentially wasted 3 years of development in their system at Georgia? Would you believe me if I told you that happened? Trayvon Walker? Well, it happened again. Mykel Williams is here. There are a lot of similarities with Mykel Williams' profile and Trayvon Walker's profiles coming out, though they are different prospects. In fact, our next player on this list, I think, is a closer NFL draft comparison to Trayvon Walker than Mykel Williams. But a lot of the same stuff, where the role that Mykel Williams played at Georgia as basically kind of like a 3-4 defensive end at 265 pounds, basically eliminated most of his useful tape. in terms of evaluating what he's going to be at the next level. And then you drop on top of that the fact that he battled through a really bad ankle injury this year. And he's another guy, like we talked about with Nick Scorton, that he does have a decent amount of fog of war on his evaluation. He's a guy that was looked at as a potential top 5 to 10 pick heading into the year and just didn't live up to that hype. I would say mostly because of the system, the ankle injury, and the system preventing Michael Williams from really developing as a true edge rusher. But either way, I think you have to give Michael Williams a ton of credit in that he is, in my opinion, the best run defender in this draft. And him playing that system as a 4i, I think gives him invaluable experience in terms of anchoring, keeping his pad level down, even though he's 6'5", but keeping his pads down, taking on double teams, playing that good technique where he can use his 34.5-inch arms to stack his hands inside, peek, shed. He has really good run diagnostics because he had to, getting overwhelmed in the system he played. He uses those long arms, and he's got quick feet for a big guy to tackle consistently. You can take this guy on day one, drop him as an outside edge player, and he's going to be I'm not going to rank him necessarily, but he's going to be a quality starting run defender on the edge and help you get into, pass rushing situations. Now, what he can do for you in those pass rushing situations, that's going to be more of a crapshoot. It just is. You're talking about a guy that very seldom had an opportunity to just pin his ears back, work a tackle, rush the passer in the way that the NFL will ask him to do. So the time on task, the ability for him to not just develop the moves that he does have, but to start to develop counters and a pass rush plan. It just, the opportunity to do that just didn't exist at Georgia. The problem is that doesn't just mean that that's going to happen at the NFL level either. Getting those 3 years in college to develop that kind of stuff is big. And we've seen a lot of guys like Michael Williams that we just say, yeah, it'll come along in the NFL, and it just really doesn't. I'm not saying it can't, but I'm not saying it's a guarantee either. You know what I'm saying? And then you mix in the fact that he did play through a really bad ankle injury from like week 3 on, and it really wasn't until the very end of this season where he even really felt like a first-round prospect again. But, man, those last couple games of the year as Georgia was, pushing SEC championship against Texas and that kind of stuff, like, I was impressed by the tape we saw from Williams. But I do want to say on a positive note, when Williams did get chances to try stuff as an edge rusher, he showed us like he's willing to work on this pass rushing skill set. If you just want to compare him to Trayvon Walker, he tried a lot more different moves than someone like Walker that was like all bull rush. And Williams does bull rush, but he also has probably his best move is more of a, using that bull rush, but quickly getting into a push-pull swim move that works two ways. That's a dominant run defense move. That's how he can slip blocks really well. But he uses it as a pass rusher too. So he's got really good technique in that move. He does have some inside swipes. I even saw in that conference championship game against Texas, he tried a fake spin. And honestly, I think it was against Cam Williams, the right tackle for Texas, who's like a mid-round draft pick. Honestly, if Michael Williams' back foot slipped on the turf, if it didn't slip, I think he might have won on the fake spin. And that could have been a moment of like, wow, there's something there, but it just didn't work for him. So you do see him try some different stuff on top of just the bull rush. So it does make me a little bit more intrigued, like, okay, if he's healthy, playing edge, can some of that development really start to come? So I don't think he's just a downright bad pass rusher. He's just severely underdeveloped. I've got him as like a C+ overall grade as a pass rusher, but again, that B+ grade as a run defense is going to place him with tied with JT Tuimoloau, who we mentioned, for either the best or second best run defender in this draft class off the edge. Now, the main reason he's not really a Trayvon Walker comp is Trayvon Walker was like, for all of the knocks I had on his technique and all that, he was a freaky athlete. Michael Williams is a really good athlete. I wouldn't describe him as like a true freak. He's not that fast. not particularly bendy. I think his kind of acceleration and foot speed and get off and all that it's okay. It's adequate for being a bigger edge. It works, but he's not this freak athlete. I don't think he has this like crazy high upside as a pass rusher. And that's why, you know, my pro comps on him, he's got more of a high floor, quote unquote, lower ceiling type of range for me. I do think as a low comp of Carl Granderson, who's a really nice number 2 starter for the Saints, an excellent run defender that can win as a pass rusher, even if it's not ultra efficiently. I think that's a very likely low end outcome for Mykel Williams, which I do think is worth a late first, early second round pick to get a young player on a cheap contract in that role. But I do think the upside definitely makes him worth a late first, at least to be something like a Greg Rousseau, who had damn near identical profile coming out. You know, not this incredible athlete, really young, kind of underproductive. In Rousseau's case, it was the COVID opt-out year, but Mykel Williams' final year at Georgia with the injury and the scheme he played in might as well have been an opt-out year. You know, Greg Rousseau has steadily improved by year. He just got a $21 million contract. He's a, you know, he if he had a number 1 interior player, he's a kind of low-end number 1, really high-end number 2 type of guy. I think that's in the realm of possibility for Williams. And maybe even a little bit more upside on top of that, depending on that ankle injury. Like, how much shine did that take off of Mykel Williams as a prospect? Is he more athletic than I'm projecting? I'm willing to entertain that possibility. It's just we don't really have workouts or great tape of him off the edge showing incredible athleticism. He did run a 40 a couple days ago. It was like 4.72. It's not terribly surprising, but I guess him and Jalen Walker are going to have another private workout like right before the draft. Wouldn't be surprised if we could get that into the 4.6s, but either way, I think we covered Mykel Williams pretty well as a sort of late first, early second round option for teams that, you know, have a premium talent on their defensive line, but need to raise the floor with their number 2 edge guy out the gate. But let's go to Shamar Stewart, my number 4 edge rusher in this draft class. This is your more sort of Trayvon Walker type of profile, the absolute freak athlete that accomplished nothing in college. Someone that you are taking rare athletic traits with size and saying, we can teach this guy how to actually rush the passer. Because right now, he just is, you know how at the Combine, it's sponsored by No Bull? Well, for Shamar Stewart, when he ran his 40, they should have switched it to All Bull, because that's what he does. He's just going to watch the ball, see it get snapped, take his 2 arms, fire it in to the offensive tackle's chest. I would say the extent of his technique being good is he will mix up his bull rushes a little bit. You know, sometimes he will long arm, 1-arm bull rush. And then he does occasionally get to a rip move, which does work for him. I'd like to see him do that more. But he is all power rush, certainly. There's not really a lot of swipes or chop moves or really like countering off of blocks. You see guys, you know, sometimes like spin off blocks late. There's not a lot of late wins for Shamar Stewart. He's either going to blow you up, make a play in the backfield right away, or the play's kind of dead for him. So that sort of like countering finesse skill set, especially, there's no plan B for Shamar Stewart. Now, I do think, like, even if I'm kind of dumping on his technique and saying he's got a long way to go before he's a real impactful, you know, pass rusher that can really get the most out of his traits and his upside, he can bull rush. Like, he can absolutely line up, tee off on a tackle, and compress the pocket. And if nothing else, you're going to be able to use him out the gate as a stunt man to be that disruptor from the edge. And that's why I mocked him to the Rams, for example, in my latest mock draft, just like we saw with Jared Verse. Same idea, where if you have an athletic 3-tech and you want to run an ET stunt and take a guy like Shamar Stewart to just collapse in between the tackle and the guard, absorb the tackle, absorb the guard, and create a free loop lane for your athletic 3-tech, he's going to be really good at that. You can even line him up as a 4-eye and have him be the kind of defensive tackle and have the edge loop in behind him. He's got the size to do that as well. So there's like ways to weaponize the one thing he does well. And ultimately, that's why like I do still have a late first, early second round grade on him. I think his floor as a bull rusher, paired with the fact that he is a really good run defender, or at least was at 285 pounds, which he played at Texas A&M, that gives him early down floor as well. Ultimately, I don't hate Shamar Stewart. I just think him as a top 10 pick, which I've started to see, is just a little crazy, and I can't get on board with that. And it sounds like the NFL loves him, and that's where he's going to go. And we've seen this like year after year after year, the king of which was Trayvon Walker going number 1 in that draft, who's been a nice high floor player in the league, but certainly hasn't lived up to what his physical traits indicated he could be. We saw Tyree Wilson the year after that. I think the best example of this type of prospect working is a Rashawn Gary, and I think Shamar Stewart could be Rashawn Gary in a best case scenario. That's great. That's a thumbs up. I don't have any ifs, ands, or buts about that statement right there. But like Lucas Van Ness, Kwity Paye, Odafe Owe, Gregory Rousseau, these guys are all kind of lumped into this raw, ultra athletic, lengthy profile that all these guys are just like, again, kind of high floor players, but for the most part, these guys don't actually develop the type of pass rushing skill sets that we envision them in March developing down the road. So that's, I think, more likely for Shamar Stewart, is he's actually more of a higher floor, lower upside type of guy, but some of these guys do hit. It does happen. And this whole kind of trend of taking these guys, frankly, all started when the Vikings got Danielle Hunter in the 3rd round. The Danielle Hunters of the world, the Shamar Stewarts of the world, the Tyree Wilsons of the world, those guys used to be 3rd round picks. But then Danielle Hunter happened, and the league was like, well, the upside is too great. We have to take this guy in the 1st round. And that just kind of is what it is. If you don't take Shamar Stewart, if you don't want to take the gamble on him, someone else will. For me, it's just what range of the draft is that gamble worth it? For me, that conversation starts at about 20, 25, more or less. I think 25 to 35 is much more of my kind of comfort zone with him. The only other sort of question/note on Stewart is, just like Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart dropped a good 20 pounds from what he played at Texas A&M. And that's interesting to me because on one hand, you theoretically will have better Getoff, better speed, more potential to start to develop some more swipes and quick hitting pass rush or finesse style pass rush moves, if you will. Theoretically should be a more bendy player than he was on tape, where at 288 pounds, he just doesn't really have foot speed and bend, frankly. But what we saw at the combine at 268, maybe there's going to be a little bit more of that on film. But at the same time, while Scorton was more of a finesse style player, I liked him dropping weight. Shamar Stewart, it is a little bit more complicated to say, okay, well, he had this incredible bull rush at 288. What happens if he's got 20 to 25 pounds less behind those pads, and that's all he wins with? Is it actually going to be as good as it was on tape at Texas A&M? I'm not saying yes or no to it. It's just a question mark. Likewise for his run defense. Is he able to be as heavy-handed and anchor as well as he did at that damn near 290 pounds he was in college compared to closer to 270? It's all very fascinating, but I think his profile's pretty damn simple. Size, speed, length, power, 1.5 sacks in each of his 3 seasons at Texas A&M. Hope the guy is coachable. Hope you can, hit the lottery with him. If not, probably still talking about a guy that can contribute as a part of your pass rush and defend the run on early downs. So again, late 1, early 2 for Shamar Stewart. That's just where I come in on him. Definitely leaves me lower than sort of consensus, but I know I'm not the only one that has Stewart in this range as well. All right, number 3 on the list, I have James Pierce Jr. out of Tennessee. Really liked his game in a way that I wasn't fully expecting, knowing he was listed at 245 pounds, because that's a lighter weight, but I think he plays stronger than that. I think he's got better core strength and certainly more strength in his arms than 245 pounds would indicate. And that really impressed me. And that's why I'm comfortable going with a Josh Sweat comp on James Pierce Jr., because Josh Sweat plays at about 255 up to 260. Watching James Pierce, I felt like he played at a similar play strength profile as Josh Sweat, and the ways that he wins and kind of how I'm projecting him as most likely a really high-end number 2, but he does have potential to be even better than a Josh Sweat as like a legit number 1 starter for your D-line if everything hits. I think play style and potential, it's somewhat close to Josh Sweat as well. So that's where I went with on the pro comp. But the main reason I like James Pierce is that he just doesn't really overcomplicate things. I mentioned out the gate with Josiah Stewart those 4 pathways that edge rushers can use to beat offensive tackles. And James Pierce just has outstanding traits to attack all 4 of those pathways. He has excellent speed, ran a 4.47. He's got great get-off. He loves to time the snap. He's got okay bend, but he's really good with his hands to swipe away outreached arms from tackles to win that corner. And then he attacks both shoulders really well, especially that inside shoulder. He knows guys are going to set wide for him because he really can threaten that corner. You know, we've talked about Stewart, Nezaraku, and Eman Mielen, like they're speed rush style players that their primary objective is to threaten that corner. All those guys were slower speed rushers, not James Pierce Jr. Like he is going to put the fear of God in you with that speed rush. And then he just stems his game together so well off of that. He paces his rush really well, and once he sees you set that rush wide, he's got enough quickness and awesome technique with his arms, and he's got really powerful chops and swipes and swims to win on those inside counters. He can win to the outside shoulder as well with those moves and a rip move. And then ultimately what impressed me the most about James Pierce Jr. is the power. I was not expecting him to really have, I said he's a speed rush player. That's his best trait, I think, but it's kind of a split in terms of what his go-to move is. He bull rushes a lot and had a way more power than I expected. I think he's got really strong hands and arms, and he's got those kind of dynamite punches where he'll stick a tackle and he'll get him to kind of go upright. And if you can get a tackle to kind of pivot up and get upright, you've got him. They lose their anchor, and he has that punch to be able to do that. But he's got powerful legs too. Like I just couldn't believe he's only 245 pounds, because on tape he is filled out. He's strong in his upper half. He's strong in his lower half. Maybe it's just all muscle. I don't know, but really impressive in that way. But I just love the completeness of his rush package. He doesn't have too many like overcomplicated rush moves, but he just understands the art of pass rushing in the sense of like what moves work for him and what that's going to do to an offensive tackle and how they're going to have to adjust to defend his best moves and then how to counter off of that. Now, there are some weaknesses here on James Pierce because we just described a very high upside pass rusher. Number one, he just isn't a run defender. I do think when he's, kind of going backwards or having to defend the run, you do feel the size concerns a little bit more. Does still have like really strong arms, and I think he's okay at shedding blocks when he really sees it and anticipates it and puts himself in a good position to do that. But again, you do feel him a little bit lighter. He will get driven backwards. And then from a technique and diagnostics standpoint, he's just hardly played run defense. Tennessee was out there with like hockey lines on their defensive line. They were consistently playing like 10 or 11 players, and they didn't really have a lot of interest in giving James Pierce run defense snaps. And in his entire 3-year career, he's played just 393 run defense snaps in his career. So that's just like a wildly low amount of time on task to learn how to defend the run. And for that reason, I just don't think you can really put him out there day one. And he does have like shorter arms, 32 3/4. It's not, it's not the end all be all, but it is on the shorter side of things for him. So in terms of locking his hands inside, stack, peek, shed, hurt a little bit there as well. So I just don't know that he's ever going to be this high profile run defender. And that's where you might pick apart my Josh Sweat comp a little bit. No comp is perfect, obviously. But the last thing we do, unfortunately, at least have to mention with James Pierce, and I don't want to go down this path too much because I just don't know. But there are multiple reports that there are just sort of maturity concerns on James Pierce Jr. I think there's, it is one of those where there's smoke, there's fire. I think if this was just kind of false reporting, I think we'd probably see him in like those Daniel Jeremiah or Mel Kiper mock drafts, like more in the top 10, because he, frankly, without that, he's a top 10 caliber prospect. But that is something to note, that's out there, and that's all I'm going to say about it. But I am going to indicate that as potential sort of locker room / maturity concerns, and only time will tell how that surfaces in the league. But obviously, I'm a big fan of James Pierce Jr. The one other thing I didn't mention, by the way, is he was like nasty dropping in coverage. He's got that 4.47 speed, but I felt like he had really good instincts to kind of pick guys up and take away backs. Like he would cover like running backs running wheel routes out of the backfield. And like he would flip his hips and like show good coverage technique. So that's another thing you can do with him. But overall, I'm just big fan. If it weren't for those reports, I'd definitely say top 10 with James Pierce. But it's one of those deals where like, if I were able to interview him and interview his teammates and do the area scout thing, that unfortunately, like, me, good old YouTuber, doesn't have access to that kind of stuff. So all I can really do is take the information we have and try to guess, basically. But if I were a team and I was able to weed this thing out and felt comfortable with it, he's a guy that, like, he has top 10 tape in any given year, given we know these edge rushers go early. And I definitely think he can be a legitimate number one, a real impact pass rusher for an NFL team. And in a worst case scenario, the run defense is just such a problem, and the character concerns lead to, like, poor work behavior and a lack of development. Worst case scenario, he's someone you can put in as a number 3 off the bench, a designated pass rusher that I still think can help you get off the field on true pass rush situations. But then my number 2 edge rusher, Mike Green out of Marshall, another player with character concerns, and these ones are much more tangible. So I'll just get that out of the way right now with Mike Green, even though it's going to kind of change the, gravity of the whole conversation. But so Mike Green, coming out of high school, had an incident of sexual assault accusations with a girl, and he ends up going to Virginia with a no-nonsense clause. Another incident happens at Virginia, and before they were able to really look at the details, determine what was real, what was not real, they kicked him out of school. They said, you have a no-nonsense policy, we don't care what happened, you're out of here. That's why he ended up playing at Marshall, and that's why he's not going in the top 10 of your mock drafts. So again, those are the facts. I'm not here to speculate. I'm just here to take what I know and apply it to the evaluation the best I can. Obviously, if Mike Green did that sort of stuff, not only do you have to question his character, but you're worried about repeat offenses, right? And the NFL has a really awful history with this kind of stuff. So you got to do your homework on Mike Green if you're one of these NFL teams. The optimist outlook on this would be, well, nothing's really happened since Virginia. Hopefully, A, maybe this stuff wasn't as serious as it was and he just got screwed over as a young kid, or B, he has really learned from his mistakes, isn't going to repeat them, and, as an 18-year-old, 19-year-old, he made some really stupid, awful mistakes, but he has grown and is going to be a stand-up person on and off the field moving forward. We don't know. There's no way to know how this is going to play out. It exists. It has to be taken for what it is. But now that we've mentioned that, we can focus on the on-field evaluation of Mike Green. He is awesome. Like, the complete package as a defensive edge player. He's got athleticism. He's got bend. He's got some power. But above all, he's just kind of like teach tape on how to rush the passer. Like, he really kind of has the whole textbook on pass rush moves. So many different moves that he puts on tape and is efficient and wins with these moves. Some guys will try stuff, like Michael Williams, for example, will try stuff, but they're not as efficient and refined as someone like Mike Green. Mike Green has a beautiful spin move. I think I said earlier, Princey Emmanuelen has the best spin move in this draft. I think I was slighting Mike Green on that. Mike Green has a wonderful spin move. Used it consistently, but broke it out in his game against Ohio State. We might as well get that out of the way. Like, one of the criticisms on Mike Green is going to be level of competition. Well, he had a great game against Ohio State, and then he goes down at the Senior Bowl, puts potential first-round pick Josh Connerly on his ass with a bull rush. He's checked a lot of boxes in terms of level of competition. And it's not like he was some, nobody that was not recruited and had to start at Marshall, right? Like, he did go to a Power 5 program initially at Virginia as well. So a lot of the kind of level of competitions, boxes that you would normally question for someone out of Marshall, I'm very much not really worried about that with Mike Green. But beyond the spin move, he has a cross chop that is just automatic for him. It's like riding a bike for him, except he's riding an offensive tackle on his way to the quarterback. The way he can get that opposite arm over, he's got the natural foot speed to pull it off, the bend, the hip torque, the power in his arms to push the guy aside and then accelerate his way to the quarterback. It's beautiful. He can threaten the corner with speed and bend and swipes. He can use that threat of the outside to come back inside on just wonderful inside swipes that he deploys really when he needs to and efficiently. He's broken out ghost moves, swim moves. Like, it's just obvious he has been in the lab working on these moves. Now, I mentioned he can win with the bull rush. He did it against Josh Connerly at the Senior Bowl, and he does it on tape. He's got a good bull rush. I will say, like, maybe the biggest knock on him is going to be the power rushing profile. His high-end plays, he has it. He's got powerful arms and it's 6'3". He can kind of get up and under you and drive you backwards. There's exciting flashes of power, but it is more inconsistent with him. The arm length does show up as an issue trying to land that bull rush consistently. He just misses with his hands a lot more than he'd like to see for the bull rush because tackles are able to just attack his chest and get on top of him before Mike Green can get on top of the tackle. So I think he can bull rush, similar to what we said with like Josiah Stewart. Like, it's enough to force you to respect it, but probably not going to be dominating tackles, play in, play out with it. And then I think that sort of overall so-so power profile leads to him being just like a pretty solid run defender. I will say he was a much better run defender than I expected at his size. I think while he doesn't have a lot of like complete power throughout his body, his arms are really strong. So he actually had really rare ability to deconstruct and shed blocks, whether he was disposing them the times that he does land his hands inside, which that length does hurt him in that phase. But even if he didn't stick his hands inside, he would just, take his arm and just shove a guy in the shoulder and push him aside and swim over, or just do different techniques to get off blocks, even if it was in an untraditional sense. Really good in that phase, and he's a really good tackler out in space too, despite his shorter arm length. So he's a pretty solid run defender. He's instinctive to knife into the backfield as well. He'll use that swim move right off the snap and just destroy plays before they ever get started. So he's definitely a practical run defender. I don't know that he'll ever be dominant in that phase, but enough that I don't think you have to worry about it too much. Man, he's an obviously talented player. If not for the sexual assault accusations, he would be a top 10 player for sure. I think back to like Khalil Mack when he came out of Buffalo, a small school guy that kind of had everything. I don't think he's quite got the power profile to be quite what Khalil Mack was, but I think he's got a really good chance at being a real number one player. And worst case is another incident happens and he's out of the league. But I think worst case, you're talking about a solid number 2 edge player. The pro comp I went with him is Melvin Ingram, who kind of fluctuated between those two descriptors as kind of a low end 1, high end 2. But in terms of the size profile, the spin move, just the kind of textbook clinician of a pass rusher, if you will, that Melvin Ingram was. I see a lot of that in Mike Green. Ingram, a first-round pick himself. And, I think Mike Green, depending how teams feel about the off-field stuff, I think he should go in the top 25 picks. And you just kind of hope you've done your homework and that he's grown up, right? That's really the last thing you can say on him. But on the field, he's a phenomenal football player. But then, of course, number one, Abdul Carter, the clear-cut number one edge for myself and I think everybody else. If someone doesn't have Abdul Carter number one, I would love to hear about it. I don't know if Chris Sims has dropped his edge rankings quite yet. He might be a candidate to throw a wrench in this thing. But, man, what an absurd athlete. The term generational prospect gets thrown around a little bit too much. And I don't know that I would necessarily call Abdul Carter like a generational overall prospect. I do think he's up there. Like, since I've been doing this, it's like Myles Garrett and Nick Bosa, probably the only two edge rushers that would be in the same conversation with where I have Abdul Carter. So maybe that makes him generational, but at least in terms of being a generational athlete, I do think that's Abdul Carter. Like, of course, you think speed when you hear athlete. I think he has excellent speed. I don't know necessarily if he has elite speed. I'm not going to rule out that if he ran a 40, it would be 4.45 or something like that. Clearly, he has plenty of speed to accomplish everything he wants to do at the highest of levels. I don't know that he, again, would run in the 4.4s. But beyond that, like, the first step, the Getoff, it might be the best first step acceleration I've ever seen from a defensive player, or at least a front seven player. And I noticed it from his linebacker tape last year. Like, he was playing off-ball linebacker in 2023, and when he would trigger, it was like he teleported to the football. And that translated immediately to the edge. So his ability to get on top of blockers, to threaten the edge with his first step or two, it's transformative. It is truly generational, that trait. And then in terms of his bend, I mean, there's not a more bendy prospect ever. Like, he is at least tied with the Von Millers, the most bendy prospects I've ever evaluated, at least. Let's just say ever, being the last 9 years since I've been evaluating prospects. I'm not convinced that he isn't made out of rubber. Like, the way that he can contort his body, and it's not just speed to bending around the corner, which he has, absolutely. But it's not just bend on like a speed rush where he's trying to turn the corner too. It's the same thing we described with Jalen Walker, where, like, if he's going to a rip move, his ability to just stay low, bend through the hip of the tackle, rip through that, and maintain pliable and powerful to accelerate through that, that's an aspect of bend that he has as well that not every super bendy player has. Like maybe Nick Bonito, for example, which is like my low-end comp on Abdul Carter. Just because I had Von Miller as a high-end comp, I wanted to at least throw a low-end comp, being a guy that was a frankly dominant pass rusher last year, and Nick Bonito. But Bonito, for example, doesn't really have that ability to kind of bend with power. Abdul Carter has that. And just that alone would make him a dangerous pass rusher, to have his get off, his bend to threaten the corner, and then an inside rip move counter to piggyback off of that. That alone would make him a great pass rush prospect. That would probably get him pretty close to where like James Pierce Jr. is. But he's got so much more than that in his bag. I've seen him break out a ghost move. I've seen him win with swim moves, spin moves, and by the way, he has a pretty good bull rush with plenty of room for it to get better. I don't know that he has the biggest power profile, that he'll ever be this dominant power rushing player. I think there's still room to develop in that way as well, though. And I think there's room to add more muscle at his frame at 21 years old. But the fact that he has all these moves, has a pretty good feel for when to break them out, when he's set something up, when to go to something else, the kind of pass rush plan of it all. The fact that he's so far advanced for someone who's just played his first year as an edge rusher, having been a linebacker the first couple years at Penn State, it's absurd. It's Micah Parsons again. And I know I have Von Miller as the pro comp. Micah Parsons is going to be another, often comp for him because of the jersey number, the school that he plays at. I get that as well. I think Von Miller, Micah Parsons, Abdul Carter, from an athletic standpoint, they're all like 6'3", 250, ridiculously bendy and powerful for their size. It's all kind of lumped in the same thing. I just wanted to be a little different and throw another comp out there in Von Miller. But man, his ceiling is that of a defensive player of the year and, best player in football type of conversation with him. The sky is literally the limit. And I think the floor is pretty damn high too. Again, that low-end comp is Nick Bonito, who has tapped into his athleticism here in year 3 to be, he rushed to like a Pro Bowl caliber level last year. I don't remember if he made it or not, but if you want to go down the list of weaknesses, I do think the play strength profile is just average for NFL rushers. Like, he can get swallowed up against the run. We talked about the bull rush, like, probably never going to be like an elite strength of his. But I do think there are like aspects of his game that show that power. I think especially in that rip move we talked about, like the core power, pound for pound power. Like, he's got play strength that just isn't at a high level for NFL edge rushers. And then honestly, the main weakness might be that shoulder injury that he's entering the league with. He decided not to get surgery on it, so that scares me a little bit. Like, is this a guy that maybe he does have some durability concerns and that limits his development? But he is really a special prospect, a blue chip prospect in every sense of the word. Like I said, he's up there with Nick Bosa and Myles Garrett for the highest graded edge rushers I've ever had doing this. And I guess good enough that he made the Titans think about not taking a quarterback, even though they desperately need one at number 1. And the fact that we could potentially see Carter paired up with Myles Garrett is really exciting as well. A lot of potential scenarios for Carter in the draft, but that is going to do it for my top 10/18 edge rusher rankings video for the 2025 NFL draft. Really hope you guys enjoyed. Again, make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of these position rankings coming up. We're going to be doing defensive tackles, hopefully within the week. Definitely got to get back to the scouting lab and finish some evals there. And then a reminder, you can get exclusive content over on my Patreon. I actually have a Mike Green film room sit down we did there. You can get the full write-ups on all of the edge rushers I've watched, with another 14 or so still to come, on top of every other player that I have written up in the whole draft at large. So that is patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. If you enjoy my draft content, want some exclusive content, and want to support the channel in the process. But until the next video, thank you for watching, and I'll see you later. Peace out.